Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Independent Author Podcast. I'm Tom Kranz. I appreciate you downloading my episodes. Today, I have the pleasure of interviewing a young woman who I met at a recent book expo in Roselle, New Jersey. She is an independent author like I am, but the reason I was interested in her and that she sounded like a great subject for this podcast is she's done an awful lot in her life, and she's only 23. And Pavlina Asta, first of all, welcome.
Thank you so much, Tom. I appreciate you bringing me on.
Yeah, of course. So Pavlina shared the tent that I was under with several other authors, and she had a table where she was displaying her new book, 20 Things Every Motivated 20-something Should Know.
That's right.
And I guess as a 20-something herself, she should know a few things, and we will get to that in detail. But first of all, the reason that I was interested, Pavlina, in you is that you seem like you got a really kind of a running start on life at a very young age. Tell me, first of all, what intrigued me was that when you were age 18, basically when you became a demographic adult, you basically went out on your own.
Yeah, well, and thank you. So I actually started my career in radio when I was 11 years old. I was playing steel drums because I just enjoyed it. I just wanted to play my drums somewhere. And I should probably say I'm from Florida. So playing on the beaches was semi-normal thing. You know, we typically had people, come around the beaches and just do their thing, whether they were selling something or whatever. For me, I just wanted to play my drums. And after, some time of getting kind of acquainted with the city, I would play at different water parks and birthday parties, and people just knew who I was because I would play my steel drums. And I started to get radio interviews from local radio stations across in my area, across Florida. And one of the radio station managers was like, you should start your own show. Not knowing what to talk about because I was 11, I started doing interviews to sort of fill the time. And my first interview was with Kevin Jonas. I snuck into a meet and greet, told the manager that I had an interview, which was a lie. I'm sorry, but it worked. And I was able to get that interview. And my celebrity interviews sort of snowballed. So by the time I was 18 and I moved up to New York by myself, which was terrifying. I'm from Florida. It's living up in New York and being up there by yourself when you're 18, you still get that culture shock and you feel very alone. And it's a scary place. New York is very intense.
Yeah. Hang on one second. I want to go back to your interview days. Yeah. So you did these interviews for a specific radio station or for a podcast or for who?
So I had my show, Pavlina's Kids Place, which I later turned into the Pavlina Show.
Okay.
And I actually syndicated that show. I self-syndicated it, which was that's not easy. I would just take an air check, basically, like a reel in a way. And I would just go to different radio stations and be like, can you play my show? Will you take this? And then when I was 14, I interviewed the CEO of iHeartRadio, Bob Pittman. And he was the one that was like, you should have this syndicated. So iHeart Radio syndicated the show all across the country after that.
And is that where you got your Guinness Book of World Records record?
So that was technically it's separate from the radio show. It was just something I decided to do one afternoon or one day, So the Guinness record I interviewed, I was actually in New York at the Arthur Ashe Kids Day event, interviewing, the different celebrities, like they have different performances and stuff like that right before the US Open. So I was doing like the red carpet and I interviewed a country singer. His name is Hunter Hayes. I've done a few interviews with him actually. So we sort of like knew each other, and he had just done a record, like a Guinness World Record for the most concerts in 24 hours or something along those lines. And when we saw each other again, he was like, you should do a record for the most interviews. And I was like, okay. So that just planted a seed, honestly. And then that was, during the summer. And by the time I was able to get everything around for the Guinness World Record, because it's a lot of work and there's a lot of rules, there's a lot of regulations, there's a lot of planning that you have to do and getting, a team around. And it's a whole heck of a lot of work. But by the time I was able to get that around, I had to be in front of a venue that was open for 24 hours. So the only two places in my hometown of Daytona Beach, Florida, that were open for 24 hours, that's a 7-Eleven and a Walmart.
Yeah, of course.
So yeah, right. And I was like, okay, it's almost Thanksgiving. I think I'd probably get the most traffic, like the most people, the most bodies in front of me if I was in front of a Walmart the weekend before Thanksgiving, or like a few days before Thanksgiving. And so that's sort of, the thought process and the planning I had behind the Guinness World Record. But it was sort of separate from the radio show in the sense that I just decided to do it.
I got you, but the point is that you've done a lot of interviews with a lot of people, both I guess celebrities and non-celebrities. And are those interviews that you did? So tell us about some of the celebrity interviews you've done. Just give us a list of names of people you've talked to.
Of course. So, I mean, I feel like my go-tos, there's been over 600 major celebrities and they've all been awesome. Like everyone that's talked to me has been super, super cool.
And these were all from your days of the syndicated show?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And because once I came up to New York, I didn't really have time for the radio show. I was finishing my high school online because I still wasn't done with school. And then I started college and I was already working at, a major media company. I just didn't have time for the radio show. But as far as some of like my go-to favorite interviews from the radio show would definitely have to be Ed Sheeran, Barbara Corcoran, Steve Forbes, Katie Couric, what's his name? Gene Simmons from Kiss. He was just crazy. Honestly, yeah. He was totally nuts. And who else? There were Ziggy Marley, who's Bob Marley's son. We hung out for a long time. Jack Johnson was a lot of fun. Chris Daughtry. There have just been so many cool people. Who else? A lot of, some NASCAR people. I wasn't allowed to go on to the racetrack at NASCAR my entire life because of like insurance problems or something. Mm-hmm. So when I finally turned 18, I did an event there and I interviewed Jeff Gordon and, my gosh, my Daytona people would be disappointed in me. I don't know who the other guy was, but okay. I know Jeff Gordon was one of them. And yeah, those are probably a few of my go-to favorites.
So you did quite a few of those. And then at one point though, you entered the world. So you got you got your college degree, I presume.
Yeah. So I, like I said, I finished my senior year of high school online up here. I actually finished a semester early in December. Like that following summer, I started at the King's College where I studied media, culture, and the arts. And I thankfully was able to graduate in 3 years. I'm not really a school person. I love school. I'm good at it. I just don't like to be in it. I'd rather be out in the world doing my own thing.
Well, so then at some point you actually got I was tempted to call it a real job. Sorry. You got a job, a more mainstream job in the corporate world. What was that?
Yeah. So the reason I actually moved up to New York was because I got an internship at the Salem Media Group. It's one of the largest radio networks in the country. And it was just an internship. Okay. Like that, who knows where that can go, but I was like, no, I'm moving up here. Like, this is my time. I need to make it happen kind of thing. And I was only an intern for about 4 months until I started producing the local show that I was on. And, you're New Jersey based. The show was for Joe Piscopo and he was, really big on SNL in the 80s. So it was a lot of fun. And then I started producing that show for a little bit. And then I moved over to one of our New York based national shows where I was the associate producer. And then this is all within like less than a year. Mm-hmm. And then by the time I was 19, so a year later, I started the department along with, with the help of the VP of one of the VPs of the company for podcasting, live streaming, digital media for the company. So I became the executive director and producer for national podcasts. And I was doing that all the way up until a few weeks ago, until I quit. And that was where I was basically working on one of our morning shows, doing all the video production for that. And I started all of the video production for it and for all of our 7 other national shows. and I was overseeing the other video producers and the work that they were doing and just making sure that it was all running properly. And since then, the company has actually completely shifted gears in what they're doing, and they sort of are coming with the times, and they're going more into streaming, which is really cool to see. So it's fun to be like, oh, I was a part of that change for that company for them to make such a big shift. It was, the podcasting, the live streaming that I wanted to do when I was 19, a few years ago, that has changed the company so much. So I was glad I was able to make my impact there and then leave.
Gotcha.
But yeah.
So then that kind of brings us to your book. You have experiences in just 5 years of adult life that many people don't have in a lifetime, which is pretty impressive and pretty amazing, actually. And I'm guessing that some of those experiences are actually grist for your book, 20 Things Every Motivated 20-something Should Know. I guess we should talk first about Generation Z, which is your generation. I'm 66 years old, so I guess that makes me generation like F or something like that. I'm like, you're 2 generations after me, I suppose. So tell me, let's start with like, what's the concept behind the book briefly, and why did you want to write it?
Absolutely. So I started writing the book at the end of 2019, and basically the thought behind it and what I wanted to achieve from it was I wanted a blueprint and a guide for young people, and really all ages, because it's not specific towards young people, although it's kind of meant for young people, but it really works for all ages, to succeed in not only life, but also in their career. Because while I was doing all of my radio show, the Guinness World Record, moving up to New York, and everything that comes along with that, starting the radio show, getting all these interviews, like every minute detail, I didn't have anyone to help me with that. And I didn't really have anyone to look up to or anyone to kind of guide me.
You made it up as you went along, basically.
Yeah. The metaphor I always said growing up was, I always feel like I have like a flashlight, so I can and I'm in like a dark forest. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like I can see exactly 2 feet in front of me, and that's about it. Like I have no idea what I'm doing. And it's just always kind of worked out. And I think, what's worked for me at least is I've always stayed in my lane. You know what I mean? Like I've been all over the place when it comes to media. Like now I do TV and radio and podcast hits where I talk about technology or business or politics or, what I'm doing or self-improvement. So it's all sort of over the board, like all over the board, but I have stayed in my industry. I've stayed in my lane of media. And I think that's definitely benefited me, but I mostly wanted to, inspire people that your age is not an excuse, but it's an advantage. That's my first chapter. Refocusing the negative, because, I think immediately people have negative thoughts, they have doubts, they don't believe in themselves. So refocusing that. And if you I try to, motivate them to if they have a dream, well, like go out and get it. You know what I mean? Like so many people, and that's a huge reason why I left my job. It was a great job. It was a great company, but I left because I knew that I wasn't going anywhere with it. It wasn't, supporting me in the way that I needed it to. And so many people stay in jobs that they don't like, that they don't, and the next thing they know, 50 years goes by and they're like, oh my gosh, how did I spend so much time at one place doing the same thing? And it's just like, I could not imagine doing that. And I want to make sure that no one else, spends their time in a place where they're not happy. And then of course I talk about failure and overcoming that and obstacles and how that's obviously going to come in your way. I just sort of I try to dive into all of the struggles they're going to have. And I try to give them solutions or, different ways they can face it, or how to make something easier. I even talk about budgeting, because go figure, millennials and Gen Zs aren't the best with money. But I've had to learn, pretty early on, like how to budget my money and how to, save properly, et cetera. So I just really try to dive into all of that. And then I sprinkle in my celebrity interviews and some of the advice that they had given me, some of my favorite quotes, and that sort of encompasses the whole book.
Gotcha. So somebody's interested because you reached one of the Amazon bestseller lists. And at the
Yes.
book show we were on, you had a table full of books and you sold every one of them. I wish I could have said that. And I think most of the other authors wish they could say that as well. So somebody's interested, and I'm also interested in the idea that even though the title says uh, 20 things every motivated 20 something should know,
Yeah.
just in my cursory, thumbing through the book, I think there's stuff in there for everybody, and the universal idea of going after what you want. Don't be hemmed in, as you
Yeah.
said, don't spend your entire life doing something you hate and then looking back with regrets. I think that's something that all of us can more or less identify with. Do you ever run into any any sentiment or awareness from somebody who says you're only 23, what could you possibly know about life? I mean, I know
Yes.
you obviously have knowledge about life because you've done a lot of stuff, but 23 is young, I think, by any standard. How would you answer that question?
Absolutely. I mean, I've come into those kind of roadblocks my entire life. Where people were like, whether I was at dance and people were like, "Why do you have a radio show? Why are you playing steel drums? Like, what is that? What are you doing?" Like I think my entire life I've sort of been questioned in like, what are you doing and why are you doing it? And it's funny because right before I started writing the book, I was actually dating this guy, and excuse me. And I told him like the concept, I had two different concepts for what I wanted to write the book on. And the first one, I don't remember, but the second one was this one, right? And he was, at the time, I think I was like 22, right? And he was like, "You're 22. Like, what do you," and he was older. He was like in his later 20s, like 28 or so. And he literally said to me, he was like, "What do you know about anything basically?" And I was just like, wow, you don't know me at all. Like I literally dumped him. I was just like, we're not doing this. Like, so when someone does do that, I usually just ignore them. Because that's, probably going to be in everything, that
Well,
you
I guess
do.
it's about not being defined but by what other people think of you or think you should do or think,
Yeah, absolutely. And
you're only 23, act like a 23-year-old. What does that mean,
yeah. And what will that do for me? You know what I mean? But the other thing is like, I I have had a whole career. I've been to like the White House and so many really cool venues, and I've met so many amazing people and I've gone through all of these things that I don't think experience has to have an age on it. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't
Sure.
think you have to be a certain age to be like, I know I've gone through this and I know what it's been like. So I still think I have some sort of expertise on it, you know?
So the book is called 20 Things Every Motivated 20 Something Should Know. And where can we purchase your book?
Yes. Okay. So the best place is probably pavlinaosta.com. That's PAV as in Victor, LINAOSTA.com. Because that way I'm able to send it right out to you myself. And yeah, I think that's the best spot.
All right, great. Pavlina, I really appreciate this really interesting interview here. I wish you luck with the book, and I can't wait to hear what's next for you coming up down the road. Pavlina Osta, author of 20 Things Every Motivated 20-something Should Know. We'll be keeping our eye on you. Thanks a lot for
Thank you,
joining me
Tom.
today.
Thank you so much. I've had a great time talking with you.